Let's
There.
let's get this show on the road. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Lord of the Rings. My name is Justin, and that
And
is
and my name is Clifford. That guy over there is Justin, just in case you can't tell the difference between Roger and Siskel. You know, Gene and Roger. I think I'm the Roger part, you're the Gene half, right?
oh my gosh.
Oh wait, because you're the one who always goes negative, and I'm the one who always goes optimistic. Is that right? Okay.
Uh,
Welcome to At the Movies with Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. Ladies and gentlemen, another wonderful hour of film criticism and perhaps a little bit of television criticism as well. But all joking aside, we really are here together for another Torn Tuesday here at theonering.net, our weekly dose of rumor, news, mischief, and, well, what else is going on? Things are burning down on the Amazon set. We've got to talk about the news. There's devastating news reports that came out from the Hollywood Reporter that revealed a very rare insight onto the inability of the Rings of Power to latch onto an audience and have them follow them all the way through the end of season one. I bet you Amazon Prime is having a lot of interesting internal meetings today. What else do we have on the boards today, Justin? Tell us more.
We have such a packed show.
Oh my gosh.
There's so much to start. But first, I want to say
I'm going to take my shoes off, like the opening of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where I take my shoes off and change into a comfortable sweater and sing a little song to all our friends. How about that? Sound good?
I was just oh wait, where'd the screen go? Hold on.
What screen? Won't you be my neighbor?
There he is. Happy birthday, Hugo Weaving. 62 years old, Hugo Weaving. It is his birthday just today, not this weekend, not last weekend, but happy birthday, Hugo Weaving. And Cliff, we love Elrond, and of course, you know, it was always going to be that Robert Aramayo was gonna be compared to Hugo Weaving, but a lot of comments in the chat in the Facebook today reminded me that Hugo's casting was controversial at the time, and there are a lot of older fans that still do not like Hugo's casting, that he played Elrond much too serious and much too I don't know what the word is, foreboding,
severe. He was what you would call the draconian version of Elrond. He was the one who suffered no fools. He was definitely the character who suffered no fools and barely registered anything except this is more deadly serious than you could ever imagine. And do you know how much I appreciated that gravitas? Especially good was when Peter Jackson decided to cut back to those flashback scenes with Hugo Weaving and Sinclair Lewis. He was the actor who played Isildur. And we go back in time to those amazing flashbacks. It's very brief, but it's very powerful. It's right after the ring has been cut from Sauron's finger at the Battle of the Last Alliance. And Isildur says, no, I'm not going to throw this ring away. But it was so important that Hugo Weaving was delivering heavy drama because that role deserved it. And it worked. It worked great. You know what was really
so you don't agree with the criticism? Oh, what were you going to say? Keep going.
Just the major complaint that we hear all the time and heard all the time back then was that it sounded like Agent Smith. Why is Agent Smith from The Matrix acting this way in Middle-earth? And I don't think that was entirely a fair comparison. Not entirely.
Well, and I think The Matrix just became this global phenomenon. And anytime something becomes a global phenomenon, of course, you know, the recent memory of everybody, you know, hearing his voice. It's, you know what? I will compare it to today. As reviews come out for Super Mario Brothers movie, there's a lot of older. There's a lot of middle-aged reviewers saying the movie sucks because it sounds like Chris Pratt and Jack Black, not acting, just Chris Pratt being Chris Pratt's voice and Jack Black being Jack Black's voice, not Bowser. And so this is the same thing that happened 20 years ago, where everybody fell in love with The Matrix, a surprise hit by all standards, and then his next movie happened to be Lord of the Rings, and everyone was like, hey, that's Agent Smith. Why does he sound like... Never mind that, he had been in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, but, hardly anybody saw that movie.
With Terrence Stamp and Guy Pearce, before Guy Pearce became famous in the Christopher Nolan film Memento. Holy cow. That movie, Priscilla, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, is one of the most fun and entertaining movies you can ever enjoy. It's so fun. It's hilarious. It's really hilarious. Are you telling me? Remember that famous line from Terrence Stamp, who was, believe it or not, General Zod in Superman 2, the Richard Donner Superman? But that great joke in the movie where Terrence Stamp says, "Are you telling me I'm holding an ABBA turd?" Do you remember that? It's hilarious. It's just hilarious.
So happy birthday, Hugo. And by the way, I was just rewatching the Matrix behind the scenes features from 1999 and the Lord of the Rings features. And it turns out, we're about to talk a lot about chaos on the set of Rings of Power, but there was so much chaos on the set of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, a runaway production, recasting Aragorn at the last minute. But
that was a moment of desperation. Yeah, and they forced Bryan Singer and Fox to change their schedule working with Ian McKellen on the X-Men film, just so that he had time to leave Vancouver, take off the Magneto costume, and they switched their production schedule to accommodate Ian arriving in New Zealand months late.
It was just Lord of the Rings was chaos.
Crazy.
People were getting hurt. The schedules were already slipping, and it was already going over budget. So you know what the studio did? New Line Cinema brought in a seasoned professional producer, and that was Barry Osborne, who had just finished producing The Matrix.
Yes. Oh, wait. That's a deeper connection to The Matrix is Barry.
Right.
Really?
So the Matrix. So the production filming principal photography started in the fall of '98, right? And then it was such a runaway. It was such a runaway disaster that Matrix had wrapped filming. The hype was real, and so New Line brought in Barry Osborne, and they were just starting to build the sets of Rivendell, but they hadn't cast Elrond, or they had cast someone else. We might hear more about that in the future. But Barry Osborne, the producer,
do you want to know the ongoing? Well, I'll let you finish that bit about Barry Osborne, and then let me tell you what Dominic Monaghan told us about David Bowie. But please continue.
So Barry Osborne says, "I'm here to help fix things on the studio's behalf." So not all studio notes are bad, and we're going to get into that when it comes to Amazon in a few minutes.
Okay.
Not all studio notes are bad. Turns out a lot of quality people at the studio know how to make movies and know what makes a movie popular. So and know how to make a movie on budget and on time. So the studio hired Barry Osborne. Barry Osborne had just finished The Matrix. Barry calls up Hugo Weaving and says, "Hey man, you just had a huge starring role. You were the big bad in Matrix. I've got another role for you. It's not the big bad. It's not even a major role. It is a single character in a whole ensemble, and you're not part of the main crew. But it's Lord of the Rings. Will you come?" And Hugo Weaving did a screen test with Barry Osborne, and the studio and Peter just said, "You know what? Yes." And basically the vibe was, let's give Barry Osborne a win now by hiring Hugo and make Barry happy. That way he'll get off our case on some other stuff that we have to fight for. So it's that negotiating balance. But Barry Osborn.
I've never heard that. I've never heard that aspect of that before.
So that's what we've heard through the years. Cliff, you've got a little more to this story.
It has never been confirmed. Like what you just told me, I've never heard before. Negotiating with Barry Osborn to let him bring in his casting of choice, just to alleviate some of the other pressures that they were dealing with. Okay, what? I'm gonna have to do some digging to find out. We'll find out soon enough. But believe it or not, to this day, Peter Jackson has not confirmed or denied what Dominic Monaghan loves to tell. One of his favorite stories at any party is Dominic saying, I was at that casting office in England. He was there in London. He had come all the way down from his hometown to go to this casting office for The Lord of the Rings in London, and he's sitting in the waiting room, and Dominic Monaghan tells us, he tells the story with a straight face.
Just tell the story, Jesus.
He wasn't the only person there meeting the casting people. It was David Bowie. Yeah, it was David Bowie himself who was walking out of the casting sessions, having just been in there to read for an undisclosed role in The Lord of the Rings. What happens then? Speculation goes crazy among fandom, as it usually does. And when you put this together, you know it could have only been one person and one person only that David Bowie would have played. In the same legendary way we talk about, Sean Connery was debating with himself and his managers whether he wanted to play Gandalf the Grey, and ultimately decided not to do it. But David Bowie must have had a reason. He must have been approached. He must have been offered something.
He looks like an elf already.
But there was always talk about David being in a Lord of the Rings anything. There was talk about that for decades. For decades.
But we have confirmation he was in the casting. He was in the audition process.
We wouldn't have known if it wasn't for Dominic telling us these delicious little stories on the side. But imagine how interesting. Now, the decision, I think maybe Peter must have commented on it years and years later, because he did say something about trying to bring in actors who would not just be such a famous face that they would take over the dominance of the screen by the luster of their own celebrity. And it was easier to cast other actors and actresses to bring their own quality to the role instead of being upstaged by a person's pre-existing celebrity. And that's the risk you run with casting someone like Bowie.
Bowie looks more pure elvish than Hugo Weaving. Hugo looks like a nice combination of elf and man, which is his heritage. So happy birthday, Hugo Weaving.
Yes.
We hope if they ever do more movies or more cartoons, or if there's anything in the future, we'd love to hear that wonderful voice of third age Elrond return to the big screen. Moving on, huge
before we move
show.
on, somebody just said in the chat, real quick, real fast. Someone said in the
chat
that,
was on screen
that Hugo was much happier to play just a little bit of a nicer version of Elrond in the Hobbit trilogy. He got to show a little bit more warmth.
That's right.
And a little bit more softness. And I agree with that. Yeah.
Well, we got to tell you guys right now, get your tickets. It is selling out. There are 9 days until the Return of the King 20th anniversary extended edition. This is a brand new DCP. They're not just playing it off a 4K Blu-ray. This is a theatrical version, DCP, digital cinema projection grade of Lord of the Rings. It is the extended edition. It is next week, next Thursday, and then the following Thursday at most cinemas nationwide here in America. Get tickets now. Screenings are selling out. They have gotten permission. Every theater has been given permission to add more screens, or upgrade to bigger screens if the tickets keep selling. But we hear that this might be one of the best selling Fathom events that they've ever had. So this is next week. Get your tickets. And I can't. They've already announced some special goodies. If you show up early, there's a nice little 20-minute pre-show with a D&D, Lord of the Rings game that they filmed with us at LA Comic-Con, and there might be some more surprises for you if you are in your seats when the show starts. Right before the show starts, you might. I'm not going to say anything. You might enjoy what you see on screen. And,
ladies and gentlemen, that's our way of saying something. Is by using the words "we're not saying anything." That's definitely our way of telling you.
Get your tickets to this, and
yes.
if I can convince one more time, we have been told that Peter Jackson and the head of Warner Brothers are personally involved in the release of this movie next week, and they are looking at the box office. And if this Thursday night screening, if this Thursday night screening next week sells enough tickets to impress everybody, Warner Brothers may consider a full worldwide re-release for the record Oscar-winning 20th anniversary this December. So, America, it's on you.
Boy.
To buy tickets to this now, so maybe world, we can all get it, and with a proper re-release in December, it would count along with the box office receipts, and maybe get Return of the King back up into the top 10 alongside Avatar, Avatar 2, Titanic, Star Wars,
yes, please.
Avengers Endgame.
Yes, please.
We can put it there. We can put Lord of the Rings back in the top 10 if they re-released it worldwide. So get your tickets. I can't stress this enough. And stay tuned to the end of the show, because we'll have Mad-Eye Gamgee back on the show with us to give us the results, the winner of the Middle-earth March Madness. I was watching the big football game because my brother went to San Diego State, and it was their first championship game. Unfortunately, they lost to University of Connecticut. But it was a good season and a good game all around, and I was really rooting for first-time winners San Diego State. So it's okay. It was an exciting game. So stay tuned to the end of the show, and we're going to give you the results. Cliff, moving on. Huge little text here. Warner Brothers is having an investor day next week, April 12th. To showcase their new streaming service, as well as a new slate of franchise content. The rumors are there is a Harry Potter TV show in the works. The other rumor is a new Game of Thrones spinoff following Aegon. And possibly an announcement of a deal for the franchise leader for Lord of the Rings. Whoever that might be. Is it Peter? Is it Philippa? Is it Fran? Is it someone new? Is James Gunn abandoning DC and going to take over Lord of the Rings? Is Zack Snyder going to sell the Snyderverse to Amazon or Netflix? We don't know. But next Wednesday, Warner Brothers should be announcing a bunch of stuff. I don't know if they've been working fast enough to get a Lord of the Rings deal in place. So I don't want to hype this up too much for Lord of the Rings fans, but the rumors are already spilling out that they want to do a Harry Potter TV show where they take one book per season for 7 seasons. So I don't know. And unrelated to this, Cliff, I haven't told you this news, but
hold on. Before we go further, let us answer quickly for those fans in the chat who are curious about Fathom Events hosting any of those ROTK screenings in the United Kingdom. The answer is, to our knowledge, no, not yet.
No, not yet. Just the U.S. on this one.
Okay.
But if Americans show up for this one-time showing this
Yes.
next week, a global re-release is on the table.
Does the Embracer Group get anything out of that Return of the King theatrical re-release? Would they be pushing for it? Or is this something within the basket of just Warner Brothers Discovery?
No, this is the old deal.
The old deal. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
this
good.
is the old deal.
Good.
Happy
That
to
clarifies
announce next Wednesday, we just said next Wednesday Warner Brothers is going to do a big announcement. But next Tuesday, we got a big announcement. Nerd of the Rings will be here live with us here in Hollywood.
Yes,
Matt from Nerd of the Rings is going to be on the show, and we are going to geek out for the first time in person since we all saw each other at the Rings of Power premiere in New York City. I think this might be the first time we've all high-fived and seen each other in person since we all saw Rings of Power. So we'll be able to get in deep with Matt in person, live in studio. I think we'll be at Scum and Villainy. So if you guys want to if you're in LA and you want to come watch the show and hang out with us, come on down. Like watch the show next week live.
It will be so exciting, and we can show that little clip that I got because I secretly filmed myself pouncing on Matt at Disneyland. I bumped into him at Disneyland a couple of weeks ago when he was last here in Southern California, and he didn't know I was walking towards him, and I did this whole Gandalf routine, came right up towards him, and his kids were like deeply confused about what kind of a stunt I was trying to pull, talking like Gandalf, but he didn't see me coming. It was hilarious.
That's funny because Matt
fun.
just sent me a photo and video. He's got a photo of you at Trump Tower, New York City, looking mighty happy.
Me?
So I don't know if that's related to what was happening today in the news, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about other stuff like the Lord of the Rings.
No, that is not a picture of me.
The Lord of the Rings.
No, that never happened. You are so full of garbage. I was never there.
You think I'm full of garbage?
You're full of garbage.
Hey, Matt, I see you in the chat. You know what? Text me that photo. Let me pull up that photo.
But that was me outside the Lincoln Center. That was me outside the Lincoln Center.
I saw you in front of Trump Tower. I saw you in front of Trump Tower.
You did not. You did not. I've never been there in my life.
Photos wouldn't lie, would they?
You guys are out of control. You are so out of control. Oh my God.
Hey, speaking of photos that lie or don't lie or lie, Cliff, this is really interesting. I got sent to this by Kelly Rice at Happy Hobbit. Someone has synthesized in AI J.R.R. Tolkien's voice, and we have a preview for you right now.
Do I want to hear this?
The Lord of the Rings. It is with a heavy heart that I have decided to rise from the grave in order to express my disappointment at the most recent adaptation of my work entitled The Rings of Power. While it claims to be inspired by the works of Middle-earth, it falls far short of the richness and depth of my own creation and makes a mockery of all that I sought to design and inspire.
I'm stopping there. Come on. Cliff, you're muted.
I know. That's ridiculous.
Did you hear that?
I did. I heard it. I turned my phone up on volume temporarily. That is really, really ridiculous, dude. It's ridiculous. It sounded barely like a radio announcer from the 1920s. It barely
sounded like Tolkien. It did sound like Tolkien. It did sound like Tolkien.
A little bit at first, but not quite.
That's so unnecessary. You could have look. The technology exists to have J.R.R. Tolkien say anything we want, and rather than have him do a whole audio version of any of his books or your favorite chapter or anything, you're gonna have Tolkien say that? Come on now.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And it is a waste of effort. That's a waste of effort. Oh wait, Matt is sending me this picture. Oh no.
No! Oh, Cliff has been caught. Put it up on screen. Cliff, hold that up to camera. Let's see it.
Where I think
let's see it. No, let's see it.
I didn't think that's where I was.
Uh-oh. Come on.
Oh, sugar. Okay. Okay.
Come on,
Do
Cliff.
not put that up on screen. Do not put that up on screen.
Don't put that.
Do you know what?
You got caught. You got
Because,
caught.
I mean, I thought
You're
that
blushing. Look at Cliff blush.
I am not. He says it's photoshopped. I was never there. Oh my God. He photoshopped me in. Do you want to know something truthful? If that had been me in front of there, you would have probably seen me making some obscene gesture or something. That's just terrible. I'm not playing around, guys. Oh, Matt. You know what? Ladies and gentlemen, watching us now on Torn Tuesday, I want you all to know something. The truth of the matter is, you know that you're among friends. You know that you're among.
We don't need to get it. We don't need to get into it. It was just a joke.
Let me finish.
But
Let me finish. You know you're among good friends.
Don't go here. Don't go
and
there.
They pull your leg. When they pull your leg that much, and they're really gonna sucker punch you with a really good joke, you know you're among good company. That's all I gotta say.
Well, that was that. I was just joking. I was just joking with you, Cliff, because that was my lead-in into this absolutely horrendous AI J.R.R. Tolkien voice video.
Yeah,
it's disgusting. How dare anybody put such toxic words in Tolkien's mouth? He was never that critical of anything.
Unkind.
Or
he was
unkind.
Never that unkind.
He you know what? He didn't like the Nazis, but he still allowed them to read his books. He didn't like the hippies. He still allowed them to read his books. You know, he didn't like a lot of things, and he didn't like a lot of people that liked his books, and he didn't like how people
he didn't like the attention.
He didn't like allegory.
Attention.
He didn't like
He
allegory.
didn't like all the weird celebrity that he got and the weird attention that he got.
And he would not be saying anything like that about Rings of Power. Period.
Of course he wouldn't.
And I want to remind people that the Tolkien estate, when they sold the rights, they included contractual language. It is the legal law for the Tolkien family to be involved in the creative decisions that the show takes.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you really have issues with Rings of Power, at that level where you're willing to make a fake video of Tolkien speaking like that, then you have to take it up with the family. Okay? Like,
yep.
Totally, I want to use AI for good. Like when we come up with those AI versions of Tom Bombadil and Nick Offerman, you know, like AI can be used for good, fun things because honestly, like you guys hated my photoshops of Lenny Henry on Bilbo Baggins's body. Like, I never heard the end of it. So that's why I'm using AI to put Nick Offerman in a Tom Bombadil costume because you didn't like my photoshops last time. You thought they were gross and disrespectful. So AI can be used for good things, but AI used to support toxic language like that, no good. AI is not going away. We're gonna have to learn to live with it and learn to call it out. So.
I appreciate Cecilia. I appreciate that. In the chat, Cecilia says that Tolkien was not like the authors these days who argue with readers online about the 1-star rating that they give. Yeah, that's true.
And I don't think Tolkien... I think Tolkien would have loved Twitter and the text-based communication of Twitter. I think Tolkien would have loved seeing language form and certain types of language spread across the world, you know, of different cultures sharing their language through text. I think Tolkien would have been a great Twitter user, but I don't think he would use it to platform some toxic views that maybe some other fantasy authors are notorious for doing, as well as some fans. So no less fans, but they choose to use their fandom for weird things. So anyway, moving on.
Indeed. Well, we have more news. There's news about the way that the Rings of Power was received by the populace, and the percentage numbers that came out of the story.
That's right.
Are probably
well,
one of
the
more
first,
interesting
the
aspects
first,
of this.
the first thing, Cliff hinted at this early in the show, but the first thing that happened this last week is on Monday, the Lord of the Rings set was on fire.
Oh gosh.
The set we've been showing you at Bray Studios. By the way,
Yes,
Cliff, remember,
indeed.
Cliff, when I was in the UK last year, remember, I went to Bray. I filmed a video at Bray Studios in an open field. I said, "This is where they're going to build the sets," and we've been showing you these wonderful drone photos from fans, showing the progress. There is this set, and which now has a Feanor statue. And
we did determine that's probably a Feanor statue.
Yes. Right, and it's right next to an orc encampment set. Well, a little production tent. I think it was a building housing props and weapons. Was on fire yesterday and burnt completely to the ground. Here's another photo of the fire. Ed Sheeran.
Oh dear.
Ed Sheeran did sing "I See Fire" for the desolation of Smaug.
Would you please? Oh man.
The Balrog has shown up to set, but he has a temper, and according to union contracts, the Balrog cannot be fired. And
You're so funny, dude.
And
You're so funny.
So the Balrog's trailer just burnt down. Rumor has it a production assistant came and knocked on the door saying, "We need you on set," and the Balrog just blew up in a flame and burnt the whole thing, burnt his whole trailer down. So
you're hilarious. Actually, I was terrified that this fire would involve more harm to people, persons, cast, crew, and animals, and performance animals as well. It turns out that it was a smaller and more contained issue that burned down a lot of props, and no injuries happened at all, thankfully.
And they were back on set filming within a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right.
So that is so small fire. It looks like it was a storage tent or the Balrog's trailer.
All kidding aside.
Look, Feanor. We've already determined Feanor might be cast in the show in a flashback. Could Feanor
really
have had something to do with this flame?
He was trying to make some Silmarils and something got out of hand.
Oh boy!
But the last time, let's put all the jokes aside for 2 seconds. The last time there was a severe studio fire in England in the motion picture industry, it was Aardman Animation. And those are the guys that do the wonderful, wonderful stop motion
Wallace and Gromit.
Wallace and Gromit short films and feature films. And
Chicken
of course,
Run.
one of them, Chicken Run, which is the greatest film of all time ever made about chickens. It is the greatest film
Someone clip that
of all time ever made about chickens. So the problem was with that fire. The fire at Aardman destroyed all their archives and the old sets and a lot of the animation props and a lot of historical material that they lost. It was a terrible, terrible incident. And when I heard this headline coming over the news about Rings of Power having a fire on set, I immediately thought the worst. I thought about how bad the Aardman animation fire was. And I'm really grateful that it's not any worse than it is. I'm really grateful.
And of course, this fire comes a week after a horse died on the set of Lord of the Rings. He had a heart attack, which is as much of a random occurrence as could happen to any actor, any actress, any man, any woman. So a horse died on set, not while filming. This was early in the morning while they were
During
still
a rehearsal. Yeah.
But yeah, they were getting set up for the rehearsal. So he wasn't even in his full dress carriage. The horse just passed out while they were prepping the horses for the rehearsal and then for a shooting later in the day. So this wasn't and this was in the morning. So it wasn't like the horse worked a full day and then was exhausted and passed out at the end. This is 1 week after the horse thing. Look, the good news is that I've got a fresh photo exclusive to theonering.net. Folks, this is Shepperton Studios. Amazon Studios at Shepperton. I believe that's how they're going to call it. Amazon Studios at Shepperton. The name is still being workshopped. This is the current status as of this weekend of Shepperton Studios. The first show to be shot here when it opens for work will be Lord of the Rings. And look at that. They are already planting trees, which means most of the bulldozers and most of the heavy machinery must already be out of the way if they're already planting trees. We've heard from local people that the rumors are that this studio will be open and start filming stuff by June. By May or June. It'll be open May or June. So it looks like it's getting closer. Again, remember, I was there last year showing you the early part of the construction of Amazon Studios. 1 million square feet of brand new sound stages, and this is where they're supposed to be shooting some big sets for Lord of the Rings with some
quite impressive.
So with some incredible effects work and huge, it's like bigger than the Batman Batcave. So that's going to be exciting. But Cliff, the big news that everybody's talking about this week is a huge
article. Yeah, that huge article from the Hollywood Reporter. Justin, it reveals some remarkable not technical, but this is what you'd call statistical information, and it offers us a new insight into the inability of the Rings of Power to latch onto the popular consciousness and have a resonating effect.
That's
if you're
right.
going to look at numbers, we're going to talk about numbers in comparison to other shows like Squid Game, Game of Thrones,
Mandalorian, and like all
we'll
the other
shows. Talk about
shows.
Comparisons so that the folks at home can understand what this is really all about.
But let me remind everybody, because there's some comments in the chat room based on the horse and the fire and all the other stuff going on. Let me remind you, we just spent 10 minutes talking about the disaster that was the early days of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, where the studio had to hire a brand new executive producer, Barry Osborne, and was like, we have to solve Elrond. We have an Elrond problem. We can't get Bowie or whoever else. We have an Elrond problem. Barry Osborne solved it. We're out of budget. We're solved it. We're behind schedule. Solved it. Actors are getting hurt. Like Barry Osborne was the fixer. So to pretend that we cannot pretend that this Amazon TV series is operating any different, better or worse than what came before. Because nowadays we laugh at Peter Jackson's disaster of a show where Sean Astin is filming 6 months in the cast. Vigo broke his toe, broke his tooth, broke his rib. Like, these are huge issues.
Sean got his foot sliced open in the bottom of the lake.
Like, this is a disaster. Peter Jackson's, like, on the surface of it was a disaster. So is Rings of Power in any worse state than Peter Jackson was? I don't think so. But that being said, it might be a little more complicated because this new article, as Cliff was just getting into, reported yesterday from Hollywood Reporter, Kim Masters. She's a wonderful person. You should follow her on Twitter, Kim Masters. But Cliff, you wanted to get to the point that other people ran the headline. 37% completion rate. Utter disaster.
What is a completion rate? Let's start with the basics. Because we've been spoiled by Netflix, and I'm agreeing with Garthemau in the chat, because Netflix has always given us an entire season all in one go, so you can binge everything in one continuous sitting. That was not the format that Prime Video did. They followed, rather, the format that HBO and HBO Max had done with Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. And because of that, you're looking at a completion rate which struggled. And that is the magic number of people who started the show and then completed the entire series, watching all the way through to the end of episode 8, and they keep track of that data. They know when they have a matrix, they have all these matrices to look at who started watching and when did they stop, and did they pick it back up and when did they finish. Looking at one of the most successful shows in the most recent pop culture history in the past couple of years, that would be Squid Game. And it had a completion rate of 84%. That means 84% of people who started it actually went through and finished the entire thing. But this low number, this very low number of a completion rate for the Rings of Power suggests the opposite, that audience engagement, perhaps greatly hobbled in that area of performance by the fact that people had to wait another week and another week to continue finishing through all 8 episodes. But aside from that, it really is a sign of the lack of the show's ability to engage and resonate. If it resonated with people, and if it resonated with pop culture, there would have been more memes. Sure, we've said that before. Right on this very broadcast, we've said things like, where's the merchandise? Where's the memes? Where's the pop culture interface? And you know what? This report from the Hollywood Reporter underscores that they have been holding on to this data, and we're looking at it now for the first time, that 1/3, I'm telling you folks, 1/3 of people actually finished watching all of season 1. What does that tell you?
2/3 of the people that started the show. There was a comment in the chat room.
Really?
That from I believe it was Twitch. It shows that how quickly people turned off the show when they realized this wasn't actually Tolkien's Middle Earth. No blank check budget can make up for bad writing. Most people turned off the show after episode 3 or 4, including some staff members of the OneRing.net who just it wasn't for them. Also, some of the same staff members that did not like Battle of the Five Armies. So take that what you will. Cliff, but completion rate is an important stat because, again, we've discussed on the show that none of the streaming services have agreed on a stable, agreed-upon level of measurement, like a Nielsen rating. So they all have their own data. So
excellent point.
The only thing we can consider is compare this to that. And like you said, Squid Game had 86%. Folks, I asked around today, season 1 of The Mandalorian had a completion rate of 82%. 82%. And let me bring this up on screen. According to this wonderful new article from Decider, that shows how bad the new season of The Mandalorian is doing. If you look at that, season 1 of The Mandalorian had an 82% completion rate. This is official Nielsen ratings for these Star Wars shows. Mandalorian season 2 was even bigger. Than season 1. So 82%, it can be considered 82 to 86%. Squid Game at Netflix, Mandalorian at Disney Plus. Those are great comparisons to say 80%, 80 to 90% is what you would expect with a hit show. So Cliff, when an article comes out and says 37%, 2/3 of people did not complete this show, what does that tell you?
That it failed to resonate with the fandom. It failed to generate excitement and conversation among the fandom, and that would have produced more that's what I mean by resonating. If it resonates with fans, they start talking about it and getting their friends to talk about it, and then they start getting their friends to watch it, and then they start having, let's call them, viewing parties. Remember how popular Game of Thrones got, where all of my friends were having special Sunday night viewing parties? When a show resonates like that, and it becomes something of a pop culture phenomenon, it takes on a life of its own, and the energy of the audience will take it to unexpected places. There are more Halloween costumes for Squid Game that we saw last year, and we'll see again this next Halloween, than we will for Rings of Power. That's one measure. We're talking online memes. We're talking parody, where people
We're talking about
comedy,
trending on Twitter when it airs.
or people inspired to make new content, like, making a parody or a joke or a rap battle. Hey, let's make a rap battle. That's because something has resonated with you in pop culture so
people
much.
just don't care about the show because they gave it a try. Everyone, and
that's it.
We have to be fair. The audiences worldwide, no matter how they want to spin this about, well, people just, if they didn't like the show, they just came in not wanting to like the show. No, I want to be clear. Fans and audiences worldwide gave this show a chance. They gave this show. They came in with 100 plus million viewers on opening weekend for the first two episodes.
They wanted to love it.
Everyone gave this show a fair shot. And the fact that it has 2/3 of people abandoning the show is not because that many people said, I want to hate this show, and yes, it did not live up to my standards. No. Almost everyone in the world gave this a fair shot. And you know what? It wasn't up to snuff. And 2/3 of people showing up, more people showed up for Battle of the Five Armies after not liking Desolation of Smaug.
Yep, that's right.
Like, people will show up if they're having a good time. Whether or not they agree with the changes or not, doesn't matter. If you show us a good time and tell a good story, we'll stick with it. But we don't care about any of these characters. And now they've doubled the cast for season 2. So there's even less screen time to fall in love with any character.
Yep.
For season 2.
I'm with you. It's just so strange. I cannot support that argument that appeared from the head of Prime Video, where she said, people just wanted to come in and just not really like this show, and they probably came to them. There was some small stripe of fandom that wanted to have an axe to grind about the show, but that wasn't the majority of us. That was certainly not the majority of us, and you can look at the numbers of how many people started the show and wanted to love it and then didn't even get there to the end. The answer to the question in the live chat is yes, there's still room for season 2 and other future seasons to improve and have things go very differently. But if you don't have people dressing in costumes, making their own fan-centric events, if you don't have the memes online where people are getting very imaginative and clever in how they're poking fun at the show and doing all that stuff, those are all the outward signs of, look at the fan art. How much fan art have I seen of The Sandman season 1? It's not just the algorithm on my socials. I see mountains and mountains and mountains of fan art.
Cliff,
But I
what
don't
do you?
see any fan art from
Well,
Rings of Power Season 1.
but
Just
because there's nothing that inspired us. Cliff,
Little bits,
do
little
you
bits
agree
here and
with
there.
this comment in the chat room from Elizabeth that says Amazon has to own up to their failure instead of blaming the fandom?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
We're not the ones to blame.
I would agree. Look, I've been trying to support the show and to clear the table for fandom to have a conversation in good faith. And I've been having this conversation with you, Justin, and all of you good people out there live on the air for years now. And always been very upfront with you and very earnest with you all, like we always have been, that we have certain really strong desires to see Professor Tolkien adapted to the big screen and the little screen.
Well, that's what he wants. I told you for 2 years now, I wanted Galadriel young and dating, and I almost got that. Look, I'm even wearing the T-shirt. I'm wearing the first official Rings of Power merch. This is officially licensed from Embracer, Men and Elves and Dwarves and Harfoots and Orcs and Rings of Power. I want to love this show, but it wasn't there. They cut my Galadriel, and they didn't even give Cliff what he wanted. And you know,
crazy pants.
Guess what, Cliff? Guess what else we almost got? A long-haired Arondir. This is official artwork from one of the concept artists on Rings of Power who posted it to his art profile page. The original design for Arondir. He was always going to be an elf of color. And look at that. He has beautiful, long, dark hair. This would have solved half of the exhausting debates online. Why didn't they give him a beautiful elf mane like we expected? Here's another image from that same artist. Look at that. Finrod was going to have a beautiful Greek curly hair.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, that's fun, but little cosmetic changes like that are, to me, a little bit of, it's a little bit of a distraction from the point of the writers had a chance and they delivered somewhat, but they didn't deliver fully. And they had the chance. And
I don't want to blame the writers because they kept the writers. They kept the writers in Los Angeles. The writers were not brought to set. The only people that could write on the show that were in New Zealand were the showrunners. They kept the writers in LA, so the writers weren't on set
because of COVID.
Because of COVID. But it's still frustrating because on a TV show, you need the writer on set. Because if an actor's having a bad day and can't get through a line, the writer needs to be there that wrote that episode to make adjustments. But if you get to the end of the day and the showrunners get on a Zoom back to LA, like, hey, so-and-so was having a hard time with his lines, can you rewrite it a certain way? It's so much more complicated and not good than, and maybe the showrunners were just rewriting the scripts because the showrunners have never showrunned anything. They're only writers.
That's right.
The showrunners have never made anything. They're literally just script doctors who've never had a credit in their life. So they're like, oh, we can fix all this dialogue. Give me the meat and give it to me raw. That's such a expected meme line from Durin.
Yes.
And it so fell flat, and it actually worked against the show. There was... but the reason I want to, again, bringing up this early artwork of Arondir, the plan of the show initially was to feel more like Tolkien and Peter Jackson's movies. This blends in. This is what we expect. And instead, the showrunners have gone on the record and said, we wanted to give the fans what they unexpected. We didn't want to give them what they expected because then they would expect it. The showrunners have literally gone on the record. I'm not making this up. The showrunners have said, well, they would have, if we used the word Anatar, the fans would have known, and we would, everyone would have expected it. So they mystery boxed everything, even the hairline of Arondir, to give
the without fully embracing the dramatic irony as a useful narrative tool, they hobbled themselves, kind of like Kathy Bates, James Caan in a Stephen King movie. They just busted their own ankles by not choosing to do the story the way that Tolkien wrote the story. Dramatic irony, people. I keep saying it, and I keep saying it. But anyway, I will agree.
Anyway, this is a huge article on the Hollywood Reporter.
I will agree that this is something that we should talk about systemically. Justin, don't you think everybody working with big streaming platforms should adapt a common system of measurement like the Nielsen ratings? I do think we need that, don't we?
We do need a standard of measurement, but no one's going to do it in the next couple years. Like, it's just not going to happen.
We could, though. It would be very useful.
So it's a long article. It'll take you about 45 minutes to read. There's a lot of juicy stuff in that Hollywood Reporter.
It'll take you 20 minutes to read. It's got some good stuff in it, but yeah, it's worth reading.
But you can see how the politics of Amazon could influence how they make their decisions. By the way, the Russo brothers had pitched young Aragorn. And when they went with someone else, when they went with McPain, they still gave the Russo brothers their own show. And that's the next big show that Amazon's got coming out. The other thing I want to say about the 2/3 of people tuning out of Rings of Power, Cliff, is what's incredible about 2/3 of people not finishing the show is that Rings of Power every Thursday had NFL football as a lead-in, which was the biggest video content in Amazon Prime's life. Also, NFL football is some of the biggest content on a weekly basis on TV, period. Whether it's ABC, CBS, Fox, ESPN, Apple, like football, Thursday football is one of the biggest audience grabbers on American television. And every Thursday, right after football, was Rings of Power. All Rings of Power had to do was keep its audience, keep the football audience, because they had football. They had 10 million people watching football every week. All they had to do was not suck. And a bunch of football people would have just said, cool, let's watch the next cool thing. Let's keep the TV on, keep Amazon Prime, don't change that dial, keep Amazon Prime on, and let's just keep it on Amazon and keep watching Rings of Power after football. They couldn't. The show didn't even do that. So it's not a failure of Amazon. It's not a failure of Amazon. It's not a failure of Amazon marketing. It's not a failure of PR. It's not a failure of platforms. It's not a failure of tech. It's not a failure of anything other than the quality of the show. And as we've said, month and month and month, when we talk about quality of the show, it was A's and B's all around, except for the writing.
Yep.
All they had to do was be good enough to keep NFL football watchers interested. It's such the bar is so it just had to be interesting enough for football people to stay tuned.
Eravandi is now asking, how much crossover is there between football fans and fantasy viewers?
Everybody saw Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is the best-selling book series of the 20th century. And everybody in the world loves Lord of the Rings movies, Peter Jackson's. And it won all the Oscars, and it made $6 billion at the box office. So it's safe to say that every casual person has some sort of affinity for Lord of the Rings, even just a little bit. All they had to do was scratch a little nostalgia, unearned nostalgia, and keep people interested. So anyway, that's the big, and I should say this.
Indeed.
I should say this on this big article from Amazon, Cliff. This is obviously a political hit piece against Jennifer Salke and the executives of Amazon Studios. Stuff like
the Hollywood Reporter piece is a hit piece against them.
It's obviously is so one-sided, and it does talk to a lot of people, but it is very much someone's out to get Jennifer fired. So take that into context when you're reading it. Moving on, do you want to hear some good news about Rings of Power, Cliff?
Yes, that seasons 2 through 5 are going to be really cool and vibrant and dynamic and much more true to Tolkien and what he wrote in the appendices. I'd love that news.
This, by the way, when I say hit piece, it's not as bad as that Brandon Sanderson hit piece. That was just atrocious. This is, when I say hit piece, the facts are real, the statements are true, and this is definitely. But it does, that article does have an agenda to make certain executives look bad. But Cliff, moving on to something good. Remember this guy? Remember Calum Lynch? Who Amazon reported has been cast in the show, and Callum Lynch. And remember, someone created this and said, "Boy, isn't Callum Lynch a shoo-in for Celeborn?"
Yes, I do. I remember that.
Well, Callum Lynch was on Ireland AM. Let me mute this. Big TV show in Ireland, a morning show in Ireland. And he actually confirms. Look at that cutie. He actually confirms that he was cast in Rings of Power before season 1 even aired.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
And we're getting zero spoilers in that world. Despite the controversy of season 1, he recognizes that he hasn't experienced any anger or flack because he's a white actor. So even though he recognizes that he was cast early, he was cast before season 1 even aired. He's become the go-to guy. Check this out. He's become the go-to guy to show up in season 2 and shake things up.
Yeah, well,
does that mean is that Celeborn?
Doesn't really shake. No, Celeborn doesn't shake things up. What does that mean exactly? I don't know about that phrase, and I don't know who wrote that.
Does Celeborn have anything to do, like, from Tolkien's writing? That, like, does he have any actions or activities? Does he actually do anything?
Besides providing wisdom, support, and love to Galadriel and their family, I'm not sure that Celeborn, he certainly was present at many great events, but Tolkien does not specifically say that he took up many heroic deeds or took up many specific, affecting things that were really powerful or efficacious. But he was present at a lot of these moments.
Was Celeborn a stay-at-home dad?
Makes you wonder. It makes
well,
you wonder.
Callum also says he's been lifting weights and wants you to know it in the character.
Okay, does that mean we're going to get a shirtless elf, which we've never had?
So, but the big thing is his character was cast in before season 1 aired, which probably means he might have been in the original 10 episode plan for season 1. Remember, they cut 2 episodes from season 1 and a lot went away.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he was supposed to have a big heroic moment to reunite in season 2, But Cliff, you don't know about this quote about showing up in season 2 and shaking things up. That doesn't sound like Celeborn to you?
No, it does not. However, if they continue on with this, if they had continued on with a ridiculous romance with Halbrand and Galadriel, then you'd have a love triangle that
Oh my God.
that J.R.R. Tolkien never wrote. And that would have been disastrous. And that would have been interesting to see Celeborn reappear, even though Galadriel believes he's been dead all this time. And he could shake things up by, separating that brand new relationship of Halbrand and Galadriel. But
Can you imagine
thankfully, they didn't do it.
Can you imagine if Amazon and the showrunners, in their infinite wisdom, said, "Hey, remember that love triangle that everyone hated in The Hobbit? What if we did that again?" I think they actually wrote it that way, and I think that, look, we've already explained in a past episode that there's many reasons that Haladriel was probably real and cut at the last minute. And the quote from Galadriel mentioning Celeborn in one little throwaway line at the end of the season just felt so last minute, and it just felt so last minute.
But it really also felt like they were dropping the most biggest obvious thing that they could drop for season 2. But it did seem like a little bit random. It seems so random that Celeborn was off stage and never mentioned by Gil-galad or Elrond or anybody else.
Anyway, we don't have to worry about the love triangle, I hope, because Haladriel isn't real. In the final edit, Haladriel isn't real and Celeborn
love triangle.
lives. Another article with Callum says after he finishes his current show, Ghosts, he will return to the set of the second series of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, which he's been filming since last November, even though he's tight-lipped on the details. Folks, this means he was already filming Rings of Power early on, and then he left to do another show. This is what they were filming back in December. Remember these spy shots from a forest area of elves. We have a black-skinned elf, a long-haired elf, and what we thought was Galadriel and Elrond, but that might not be true. And there's another elf behind the tree that we can't see.
Okay.
So
wow.
Callum might have already been shooting as an elf here, which would make if Callum was already shooting, we know that back in November, December, they were almost exclusively shooting elf footage, which further supports that Callum is Celeborn the elf.
You know what's interesting? We have Professor Tolkien having rewritten and revisited his ideas about Celeborn and Galadriel, and he revisited their story and was changing things over and over. But because the show has already given us a season 1 bit of logic, I mean, their in-world logic is that she thinks he's dead, and she thinks that Celeborn was defeated in some distant field of battle, and he was defeated and never came back home. And Professor Tolkien never wrote that. Of course, he never wrote that Galadriel was under the burden of being duped by Sauron in disguise, and he never wrote that she was under the burden of thinking that her husband was dead and gone. She was never under that burden. So it seems that the writers have gone so far astray from the content that admittedly Professor Tolkien was rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. But it seems they could do so many unpredictable things. I want to get to this question because it's being pointed out right here in the live chat. And they're asking, what do you think they're going to do with having Celeborn appear in the story? How will he appear in the story? What impact will he have on the story? And I'm telling you right now, folks, it is deeply difficult to even guess because the showrunners have already gone so far off the beaten path that they've introduced an artificial notion in season 1 that Galadriel herself is artificially under the idea that he's gone. Now, let's talk about mystery boxing in comparison. Justin, don't you notice the difference that everyone in the audience knows that Celeborn is alive? Galadriel on screen does not know that he's alive. And so they're using an element of what I've talked about many times before, of narrative, and this narrative tool is audience knows more than the dramatis personae who are on screen. Why wouldn't they have done that with Anatar? If they're going to do it with her husband, why wouldn't they have done that with Sauron? That we would have known who Halbrand / Sauron was / Anatar. Why wouldn't they have done it that way? If they're willing to use dramatic irony to keep Galadriel in the dark while she's actively involved in all these things going on in season 1, keep her in the dark about the death of her husband, while the audience is going, oh, wink, wink. Guess what, Grandma? She's talking about her husband who's still very much alive. And I would elbow my relatives while watching the show and say, that's subterfuge. You know, he's not really dead. She thinks he's dead.
Andrew in the chat room says he could help Galadriel be less angry. What if they had a marital spat and he is the reason she was angry in the first place? It's such a blank slate. They've written a blank slate here, so they can take this anywhere their creative hearts desire. But Cliff, Callum says that he is currently scheduled to report back to Rings of Power in mid-May or June. And remember at the top of the show, Cliff, when I showed you this exclusive photo of Shepperton Studios, when did I say that this studio would be operational? Mid-May or June?
Yes, you did. Yes.
So, the question for you, Cliff, is if this studio, Amazon Studios at Shepperton, newly built, is ready to go in May or June, and Callum Lynch is supposed to show up for work on Rings of Power in mid-May or June, what set would Celeborn be in?
Wild speculation, but I would assume if he's gone off to distant lands and has been lost in battle and isn't really lost in battle, if he shows up again, I think one of the first places he'll go is Lindon, and we might or might not have a scene with Elrond and Gil-galad and Celeborn before Galadriel is even there. I don't know. That's just a weird guess on my part.
All right. We got a couple more things before we bring you Middle-earth March Madness. The folks at Brazil, LOTR ROP Brazil, says Diego Perez, a production assistant who was on season 1 of House of Dragon, has just posted a wrap photo from season 2 of Rings of Power. Looks like they have wrapped episode 6, which was directed by Sana Hamri. Remember, there are 3 female directors on Rings of Power season 2, and Sama, if I recall correctly,
worked on The Sandman, didn't she?
I thought she was Mariah Carey's music video director.
That's right. Different. Yeah, she was the one who did Mariah Carey's music videos.
Yeah, yes. So Mariah Carey's go-to video director, I believe, is this director. Anyway, so I think this just means, I don't think episode 6 is complete. I just think his part of that location on episode 6, because from what we understand is that they're shooting all of the scenes for every episode at one time in each set. So they can wreck the set and build the next one, because there's only so much space. So I believe that they're not almost done with shooting. They're only halfway done through shooting. And remember, episode 6, there's only 8 episodes in the thing. Finally, Alex Tarrant has posted this picture of London. This is not London. This is actually outside Bray, Studios. This is near Bray Studios. In fact, I've walked down this exact street when I was over there last year. So Alex Tarrant posted this photo from Bray, which is near Windsor. It's near Windsor Castle, where the Queen, or where the Windsors live. And Cliff, the rumors are that Alex Tarrant is playing a character called Valandil. Valandil. And according to the internet, he was the third High King of Arnor.
Well, he was actually one of Elendil's younger sons. Excuse me. I said that wrong. It was Isildur's youngest son. My mistake.
So
grandson of Elendil, direct heir of Isildur, his youngest son.
He was one of Valandil was one of Isildur's sons, and again, Isildur is dead.
Yes.
Speaking of that framing of what the audience knows versus what the character knows, according to all of us, Isildur is dead. He died in the fire of Mordor. So I don't
yeah,
think
sure. That's why the horse Beric is running around looking for him.
Leia Marie. The chat room is correcting us. This is why we love doing this live show. He was in season 1. He's Isildur's friend. He's Valendil. So this guy, this character,
spelled differently.
Valendil, Alex Tarrant plays Valendil in season 1 and season 2 of Rings of Power. He's currently in Bray, and that must be why Isildur names one of his sons after his friend Valendil.
Oh.
Okay, I see what they're doing there. One thing you can't say about McPain is that they aren't clever, because McPain are clever. The problem is, I think they're too clever for their own good. So what are they shooting near Bray? Again, we've shown you the drone photos. At Bray, they have that big orc encampment set. Remember that big orc encampment set? This would make sense that his character, which is Isildur's best friend, is performing in the orc encampment set in Mordor. So maybe his best friend comes and rescues Isildur in Mordor. So
Valandil. Oh yeah, Alex Tarrant. Yeah, I remember him. Yep.
So lots of exciting things happening but the most exciting thing for the last month has been Middle Earth March Madness, and we're going to bring in Kathy and Jim to find out who you all voted for a Middle Earth March Madness. There he is, finally. Thanks for holding on. We had an extra large show today, so thank you both for hanging in there, and welcome to the show.
Hey.
Hello there. Good to have you with us, my friends. Both of you.
I can't believe you didn't recognize Alex Tarrant in the show. I mean, because he's on Hawaii, or no, NCS Hawaii.
Yep.
He's one of the stars there. He's the one with the big bushy hair and everything like that.
Well,
the one that actually sliced Gladriel's arm and won the
yes, won the contest
sergeant.
against her.
Not that it excuses my absence of brain, but that's one of the problems of having 23 stupid long dang characters. Like, this is what happens when you have too many characters in a show.
Like enough to fill a 64 bracket Middle Earth March Madness?
They literally have enough characters in season 1 to fill a 64 bracket Middle Earth March Madness. I cannot keep up with everything, let alone...
There was only about 60 characters. The rest were Fireflies and Balrogs and...
You know, Kathy, I gotta say, you mentioned CSI, which is one of the biggest shows on TV. There's like a ton of spin-offs. of the show.
NCIS. It was NCIS.
NCIS. Yeah.
Yeah. That he's on.
Well, there
if you-
was spin-offs of both of them.
Yeah, if you read that Hollywood Reporter article about the drama going on at Amazon, you'll get the hint that the mandate from the top is Amazon is looking for a big middle class hit like Law and Order, NCIS, CSI, just something that like everybody and their mother watches every week. Just like
Yeah.
You have to do a procedural then. I mean, it has to be either a medical drama or a police detective
well,
drama.
and this is
Those
what
are
I
the
thought.
ones that do that. Those are the ones with 20 season long runs.
They go for 20 seasons. Then this is what I thought Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power was going to do. I thought every episode would be a nice little self-contained story. I know you guys don't want it, but I wanted something like Riverdale, where there's a little bit of teenage angst and hot people doing hot things and young single Galadriel and young single Elrond doing their thing. But these are just formats of a show. So when you read that article from the Hollywood Reporter, it goes and says Amazon absolutely wanted to make a regular TV show. And for some reason, they turned in what this show is, which is not a procedural. It requires you to watch every episode. And Cliff, we had reported this for the last year, that the original intent might have been to drop all episodes at once, and at the last minute, they changed their mind and made it episodic every week.
Well, and yeah, that because that was my argument. That Netflix, has sort of trained people to be able to binge, and a lot of people, younger people, like to binge because they're like, I'll take a weekend and I'll watch an entire show. If I don't like it, I don't have to go more than 2 or 3 episodes in. And if I really like it, I make my popcorn and I sit through to 2 in the morning, and then the next day I get up and watch the last 3 episodes.
And and it also supports why they released the show on a 5-day holiday weekend here in America. Like,
yeah,
it was almost like the date and the way the show is structured was just like, oh, this needs to be binged. Let's drop all episodes at once on a long weekend.
They dropped 3 episodes, the first 3 episodes of Andor, even though Disney Plus, they do the episodic thing, but they dropped those first 3 episodes because it was a slower paced, dramatic thing, and they really needed to get you into where in the story you are with the Andor character.
Yeah.
Right. So,
well, the chat room's roasting me. I have to stop talking about Riverdale because the chat room just completely roasts me every time.
No, if you want to talk about a long-term sci-fi fantasy show, Supernatural ran for, 15, 16 seasons? That show ran
Supernatural. Huge fan base.
And they're rebooting it now where you get the younger Winchesters. So,
no way. Really?
Yeah. It's on already. But they're already doing it. Yeah, they've got the Winchesters now. So you've got the younger versions.
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
So, but going back to the Callum Lynch thing real quick, just because he looks like a young Martin Sokus does not mean he's Celeborn.
Well, we were right. We were right about the other actor who was on Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, Will Poulter. We were right about him being cast as Elrond because we thought that he looked like Elrond, and we were right about that.
Yeah.
So,
it's a good theory, but then trying to gerrymander the storyline around whether he was supposed to be there at the end of season 1 or not. I mean, we did lose 2 episodes, didn't we? Wasn't originally going to be 10 episodes, and we lost 2 episodes, mostly due to the casting changes of a certain elf.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he was also Narvi. I mean, if he was supposed to be there in season 1 and he's working out, why not be Narvi?
He's going to be a big one. All right, let's get into Middle Earth March Madness. Jim, do you want to share your screen?
I would if you'd let me.
Oh, geez. I'm in control here.
Share screen. Allow participants. All right. Boom. There you go.
Okay, here I am.
Excellent.
There you are. All right.
All right, we're getting the show on the road. Woo!
Screen here. Okay.
So again, Middle Earth March Madness. You guys have been voting for the last several weeks on a 64 bracket competition, and it's been a ton of voting, hundreds of thousands of votes, and just amazing that Rings of Power, after only one season, has 64 fleshed out characters that could even fill in the brackets. I mean, we did run out, and we used a tree, the white tree, for one.
But the tree had a
Well,
name.
we also had the fireflies, and I thought maybe the Ents would have been.
Yeah, we
they
met
would
the
have gone.
Ents. But
That's
the-
right.
The tree at least had a name. It was Nimloth. But
Yeah, the tree does have a name.
The wolves.
Heck, we could have actually gone with Telperion and Laurelin too, even though they were very shortly in there.
They were in there. I never thought we'd get that on screen. So that's how the brackets are looking, huh, Jim?
So that was leading up. It's Wednesday. So on Monday we announced the winners of the Final Four. This was going into the Final Four, where we had Galadriel and the Stranger, Arondir and Elendil. I was curious if you guys had any tourney highlights that led us up to this point.
Not really. Like my
I
guy
was
died early.
surprised-
Your time.
I was surprised to see Beric going up against, and I almost thought Beric was going to beat Isildur.
Yeah.
He didn't, but then Isildur dropped out the very next round. So that one was surprising that Isildur lost out that early.
It was one of my highlights too.
Yeah.
First, Arondir went deep. He was our 4 seed in the Southlands region.
I was really surprised that he beat Adar.
But Adar and Halbrand / Sauron. So
that one was a surprise too. Yeah.
By the way, did you were you watching the show when we had that artwork of Arondir with long hair?
I did see that today. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I hope you show that again at some point, because I was watching on my phone, because I was doing a Cruise Line Japan webinar at the same time. I had 2 things go on at the same time.
Yeah.
So my ears and my eyes. So I was looking at it on the phone, so I couldn't see it.
Another big factor, and this was really intentionally worked into the show. You know, if you think about Lord of the Rings, we had strong women, although we had obviously we had Éowyn as a particularly heroic figure. Arwen had initially been worked into the Helm's Deep battle, but then was excised after the fact. And then Galadriel was ethereal and floating over, but obviously very strong. But in Rings of Power, there were lots of options for heroic women, and they went far in this tournament. So whether that was Disa or Muriel, Bronwyn, a couple of Harfoots, and then obviously Galadriel in our Final Four. So that was noteworthy. Like Kathy, you said, we saw early exits for some really strong characters. Isildur could only beat his horse, and that was not by a much.
Beric is pretty popular.
Yeah, Beric was popular. Gil-galad dropped out fairly earlier than you'd think, but perhaps the High King of the Elves in Middle Earth would have. You saw some really resilient Uruks, named characters who were really fleshing out something.
Well, Wrath was easy because it was Jed Brophy, so I think most people are like, "No, I'm going to vote for Jed." But he's in everything.
Even Grugzuk went far in the tournament compared to what he might have been. In the end, the Legendarium characters ruled. There were half of our Final Four, and if you believe that the Stranger really was Gandalf, then there are 3.
Or actually, any of the named Istar.
Yep.
You know.
Some of those highlights. So these were our Final Four. We've already announced who the winners are. This was the path to get there. Galadriel had to work through both the Balrog, Durinfor, and Elrond to get into the.
Yeah, Durinfor and Elrond being such popular characters, I would have expected one of them to have come out of that round.
Yep, but
I did not. I knew Galadriel was really popular, but the relationships with both Durin and Elrond, I thought that would have cleared one of those 2 to jump that hurdle.
So that was the Galadriel review, and then Arondir really had to overcome some serious competition. He got by this Rowan character who is an unfortunate victim to Adar early on. another one of our orcs. And then he had to beat both Adar and Halbrand / Sauron to get into the final four, which was pretty sporty. So that set up this matchup. And as we announced on Monday, it was in fact Galadriel with more than 2/3 of the vote.
Yeah.
Overcame Arondir. So she was our first semifinal winner, which put her into the finals.
Of course, the lead character of the show.
Yeah.
Do you think she'll be the lead character of all 5 seasons?
Well, she certainly has that arc. And she has to move from this sort of battling warrior lass to this amazing presence that.
Well, if she stops thinking that she's a widow, maybe that'll help.
Could be.
Yeah, exactly.
You saw
exactly.
You saw a little bit of that toward the end, in the final episode or two.
And
so
then
here's the road that our stranger took. He had to get by big antlered people in Marva Meadowgrass, and then he had to get by the heroic hobbit lasses, one of which becomes almost the Frodo of the series in Nori, and the Samwise.
And of course, Poppy is the Sam.
So,
I mean, seriously,
But ultimately, it was the stranger who came through to that Final Four matchup, and he's up against our man Elendil, who had to
number 9. That's Valandil. Justin.
There's Valandil. There he is.
Okay, I get it.
Yes,
there
of
he
course.
is. He had to get by Nimloth the Fair, the White Tree, an offspring or a recreation.
I actually thought that was going to be a real challenge to get past, because of the tree's importance throughout. I mean, it's on all the heraldry. Once you get to Gondor, it is on all the heraldry.
Well, I just like Elendil, and I like the actor, and I like the actor's voice, and I don't like the mystery boxing of the strangers. So I voted for Elendil.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was after Elendil got by Muriel, it set up this final in match 2, and as we announced on Monday, it was indeed Elendil with less than 100 votes. This was a real
and the stranger was leading for a long while, because I was posting a lot about Elendil calls for aid. I posted that a lot, so I know he was trailing for a while there.
Do you think the stranger suffered from not having a name? If we knew who that character was, do you think he would have just railroaded to the finish?
If we'd named him Gandalf, maybe.
Well, the very first
or Olorin.
Middle Earth March Madness was won by Gandalf. He won the
very first one.
Very first
In fact,
one.
I think he won twice, and we finally had to pull him out, and that's when we started pulling some of the characters out as they won, because they were always leading, like Sam. Sam also won early on.
Which this is like our 14th year that we've done March Madness now.
Oh, I think we've been doing it even longer than that.
How many has been? I think Green Dragon's going to post a story tomorrow that might give you a bit of that.
Have some of the history, yeah.
Sweet.
You're right. I think Gandalf.
She also wants to make sure that Justin remembers that there is merchandise.
Oh, that's later. So the bracket here is Galadriel versus Elendil.
So there's our
and
bracket.
Our final. I did not think we would get this matchup. This is an incredible matchup, and since I haven't read the books or anything, I don't know the significance of this matchup. Cliff, can you enlighten me?
I'm going to enlighten you by saying, here's my library card, borrow it, and please go to our local library and check out some books. No, honestly, this is...
Two Titans. This is two Titans.
These are the two biggest lore characters that I suppose even more than Elrond and Prince Durin, and probably more than other characters, but these are the ones that carry far forward into the end of the Second Age. And I would like to say that one of these characters, without spoilers, goes much further into the Third Age, and then it's just there's a familiarity. And if anything, if I've learned anything, with the OneRing.net doing these March Madness things over all these years, the popularity contest of voting on characters comes down sometimes not to who you think is your favorite, but who you're the most familiar with.
Yeah.
And if that might be fair to say, but here's what's happening. Elendil is responsible as leading the faithful, who are the set of Númenóreans, maybe you could say considerable population of Númenóreans, who will not worship Morgoth. They do not fall under the entrapment into the snares of Anatar. And Elendil leads this whole community of people into exile after the destruction of the island, and then they go and settle on the continent, and hello, here comes Gondor in the near future. People are relating...
Without Elendil, there is no Aragorn.
Exactly, and people are relating to that connection and their familiarity with the story like that, but Galadriel is here because we're way more familiar with her than we are with any third-tier character who's supposed to be a college buddy of young Isildur. There's no relatability, so that's why we are where we are.
So both of these characters get really close to defeating Sauron.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a sword involved that is the most important sword in the entire lore.
What do you mean? That the broken sword? That piece of junk
sword,
that just breaks when you need it? That breaks when you need it? What a piece of junk.
It still worked. It still worked.
To your point, Cliff, these are really such archetypical characters. Particularly, I mean, Tolkien and the children of Ilúvatar, he talks about the elves and men.
Yes.
And these two characters exemplify what Tolkien is saying. You've got, in the elven case, someone who's living out the entire history of Middle-earth. And in Galadriel, you have someone who's been before the trees, has seen the two trees.
Yes.
And lasts all the way until the beginning of the Fourth Age.
Yes.
And that's what elves do. But in Elendil, you have the king of the faithful, who can track his line all the way back to Elros and the beginning of Númenor.
Yes.
And all of his legacy, which Kathy said, ultimately ends up in the kingdom, which ultimately survives longer than the elves. It's as the elves are sailing back to the west, as this is now the kingdom.
Oh.
And it is landed right on top of Elendil and his legacy.
Excellent point.
In Aragorn, ultimately. But he's mortal. And so you have this string of humans and mortals, some of which do really well, and some of which are horrible, like our Pharazôn. So, so you get, it's fascinating that we get two of those archetypical heroic representatives of their two races up against one another in this final.
Question from the chat.
I fully agree.
Question from the chat. Would you folks like to see a spin-off show, like a survival show called The Faithful? Like Elendil Walking Dead style. I mean, obviously there's no zombies, but like a survival show about the faithful as a spin-off.
Give Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne some time, and we may yet have zombies, Middle-earth zombies.
We're going to get... Yeah, because we're going to eventually, somewhere in maybe season 3, have the fall of Númenor, and then we'll have a season or two of the building of Arnor and Gondor, and the Númenóreans basically coming into power in Middle-earth. So we're kind of already going to get that if the end point is possibly going to be the last alliance of men and elves, then we have to have the building of those two kingdoms.
But we're also going to get Nazgul. So we're going to see zombies.
And wait, right. Where does the King of the Undead, King of the Dead, where does that army fit into the story? Is that Elendil's oath that they break?
Or I think it's
no.
Isildur's.
They made an oath to Isildur after Elendil was dead and gone.
Who's still alive, by the way, but that's another.
Yeah, you're breaking the lore of the show, Cliff. Stop.
Oh gosh, no! Please, Isildur, don't die in that house fire.
Well, I want to see in the chat, who did you vote for in this contest before we reveal the winner?
That's right.
I want to post in the chat who you voted for. Cliff, who did you vote for? Because I voted for Elendil.
I vote for Elendil as well. Absolutely.
Same here, yeah.
Oh my
As a
goodness!
follower of Rohan, having my sword and my shield back there, Rohan always comes to the aid of Gondor.
I love all these characters, but we are of one mind on this. All four of us, I voted for Elendil.
Yes.
Well, it's his story is more important in the Second Age than Galadriel. I mean, at some point in time in that Second Age, I believe, is it Second Age or Third Age when she founds
Second Age.
Lothlorien?
Yeah, Second Age. She moves to an over. She doesn't found Lothlorien. She kind of moves in and kind of takes over.
The chat room is overwhelmingly saying they voted for Elendil. Is that because, like you said, he's got more to do in the Second Age based on the books? Is it partially because people aren't identifying with the portrayal of how Galadriel is portrayed in season 1, or is this a portent of things to come? Because, well, let's get to the winner then, because like everybody in the chat room is saying Elendil.
So, are you guys ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Everybody is wrong.
Oh, wow!
I saw when I voted yesterday. I saw how big the difference was. So I was like,
wow.
58% of the vote. She started at almost 2/3. So Elendil clawed his way back in. But ultimately, it is indeed Galadriel who is crowned our victor.
That's a great shot.
She is being crowned.
Great.
That's awesome.
That's great.
That is incredible. Wow, this conversation. Wow, comment from the chat room says Elendil's story so far in Rings of Power has not gone off book. Like, is Elendil the most true to Tolkien so far?
Well,
except for the addition of a daughter. But then again, I think we can write her off simply because she's not faithful, and so she doesn't play a part in Middle Earth history. But other than that one little thing, but adding a daughter, his story is very, very spot on.
Other than aiding and abetting a terrorist who planted bombs on the ships. I mean, I'm talking about Kemen and his haircut.
Yep.
His famous haircut.
Kenan didn't make it through the first round, as I recall. So.
Yeah,
I am not surprised.
The hair. It was the hair.
Yeah.
This is an incredible. It's not even an upset because Galadriel's been so strong the whole way. So, it's just a good.
She is a very
good
recognizable
game.
character. Yeah.
You know, this might prove to bode well for Amazon Prime and their prospects for season 2, because even though the Lady of Light, Galadriel, is the most controversial character that they have presented in a rather differing light than we're used to seeing her in the books, it's still, she is the character who's captured the imagination.
Yeah, thousands of people voted for her.
Maybe more and more and more folks will come to seasons 2 and 3 to see her gradual transformation.
We shall see.
She starts, like I said, she starts making that transformation, once they're down in the Southlands and she's interacting with the humans. You start to see her soften a bit.
Aravandi in the chat room says, I'm honestly surprised after all the griping I've seen about her. I don't mind her, but oh well. So is this a sign? I guess this question for the group. Is Galadriel winning here a sign that the toxicity of social media against Galadriel is not representative of the full picture of fandom, and most people actually do like her?
Are you asking that? Are you posing the question that social media and its toxicity might actually not represent the majority view?
Wow, I never would have thought that. A bunch of little screaming.
Call me crazy. Call me crazy.
Well, and you also got to remember, in the books, her character exists in the books. So even though you're presenting the Rings of Power Galadriel, she's still Galadriel of the books as
She
well.
is still Galadriel.
And so for those who read the books, that's how they're voting for characters. And of course, you know more about the Galadriel character than you knew the Elendil character in the books, simply because it's his story is mostly in the appendices, and he's just a name on a long list of King's War.
As Cliff could tell you, and Justin will after he gets that library card, you know, Tolkien was working on Galadriel over and over. I mean, he was working on her constantly.
To the end of his days.
Yeah, and so her story changed, who she was married to changed, backstory. So it was a constant.
I mean, she had more than one husband.
But she was constantly in mind.
Don't give the writers any ideas.
Oh gosh. Stop it. Just stop it right now. Stop it now. I insist. I insist. Anyways.
So that takes us, that's the end of Middle-earth March Madness. Like we said earlier, we do have some merchandise. If
how cool.
you liked Middle-earth or loved Middle-earth March Madness, you can go to that website, the oneringnet.myspreadshop.com, and you can find lots of Middle-earth March Madness shirts and aprons and hats and totes and stuff.
Yeah, cool. I think, I can bring it up right here. Yeah, we've got, you can get all the fun merch. Get a little hat. If you voted, you get a little mug, coffee mug, a hoodie, t-shirt, hats, a little
Jim
button even.
Sharing,
I was going to show
sharing, you can.
Sorry, I didn't click the right button. You can leave it there, but we've got a little bit of everything. It's myspreadshop.com. Just search for the One Ring Net at myspreadshop.com. And there's a little bit of March Madness for everything. If you want to show off your that you're an uber geek, that you vote in March Madness polls for Middle Earth to all of your coworkers over Zoom. There's even a little teddy bear with a Middle Earth March Madness T-shirt. I actually like this tie-dye one.
I've actually been attending NCAA championships. I went to the UCLA was hosting the gymnastics competition and for the Western Regionals. So I got to go to a bunch of meets, and on Saturday I got to see 2 10. Well, actually there was 3 10s, but 2 of them were from the UCLA ladies, who are like the number 4 seed in the country. And so in 2 weeks is their final, and I'm a big gymnastics geek. But I've been doing the whole NCAA championship thing. Actually, I've been going to whenever UCLA hosts an NCAA regional, I always go, whether it's gymnastics, basketball, or whatever.
And then final note again, a reminder, next Thursday, it's a special Lord of the Rings Return of the King extended edition. That is over 4 hours long. Stay through the credits. It's almost 4.5 hours long. And if you show up 20 minutes early, you'll get to watch a special celebrity D&D type game that was filmed at LA Comic-Con last year. Also, other surprises if you show up early there won't be any trailers, but there might be some special stuff before the movie starts. So that's next Thursday. Tickets available. Tickets are still available. That's only 9 days away.
Wow.
Jim,
I'm planning on going to the one in Century City because they've added a second screening that I can get to. I'm doing a Tourism New Zealand event up by LAX, and I'm like, okay, Century City is really close. I can get to that one in an hour, so hopefully I'm there on time.
Jim, I want to thank you for putting together these wonderful presentations and keeping everybody up to date on the winners every round. Again, the fans narrowed it down from 64 down to one winner. But the thing that I loved most was hanging out with you, Jim, on these live stream announcement dates. What do they say? What does they say in the movie? Good aimless chatting.
Is that Minas Morgul actually lit up?
Yes, it is. It is. That's a wonderful weta piece back there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful.
I did not know it lit up. I mean, I have the small version that they had the Gondor and the Minas Morgul, the twin ones that came with the DVDs.
Yep.
In the box sets.
This was a limited release that Weta did, and it is beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
In all its green glowing glory.
And I love the cave trolls. waiting for, trying to pounce on Bilbo.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
That's wonderful. Well, this has been
That's
a huge
such great
show.
stuff.
Again, Middle Earth March Madness Galadriel is our winner after a very, very wonderful fun. And you know what? We've proved that social media is not real life. The fans the fans of Lord of the Rings just love being in Middle Earth no matter what. And even though there's new data that shows that 2/3 of viewers did not finish Rings of Power,
And
the
I'd
ones
like
that
to know
did,
how long they track that. I mean, do they track it for a month after that last episode, or do they track it for 3 months? I mean, how long?
they track it for 30 days after your first viewing. So when your account hits play on the first episode, you have 30 days. They consider it a completion if you watch the whole thing within 30 days.
Of that episode?
Of the whole show.
Well, the whole show didn't come out in 30 days. I mean, it started on September, whatever it was, the Memorial Day week or the Labor Day weekend. It was 2 episodes and then 6 more, so it was longer than 30 days.
Well,
so it's got to be 30 days after the last.
It's got to be 30 days after the latest thing. Netflix drops all the episodes at once, so it's easy for Netflix to say, this is how we track it. So when Amazon says it, again, this is why, Cliff, you were just talking about that there's no standard of ratings, because Netflix drops everything at once, and then it's like, oh, you have 30 days to watch it all, and we'll count it as a good thing. And Rings of Power took their time, took what, 6-8 weeks to
because HBO is going to have the same, because they go episode by episode as well. So
Star Trek.
Well, I finished the show. Everybody
it
here
makes it harder for us to analyze. It makes us harder for us, for the purposes of analysis, commentary, and generally fan discussion.
And even if they don't,
we all want to talk about this.
So even if they don't agree with agreement amongst all of the streamers, each streaming company that does it episode by episode should sit there and say, "This is our metric." So 30 days pass when you start whatever is the last episode you actually turn on, and stuff like that. Because if you don't announce your metric, then, I mean, I'm sorry, coming from a special education teaching format where we have to do tests, if you don't use the same metric when you're testing all of your students, and then you have other students to compare it to, then
the data is useless.
It's bad data. It's bad
data. So
that's
so I suggest everybody go to thehollywoodreporter.com, search for the Amazon article, because it's a long read, and in the meantime, go to the Barbie generator and make your Barbie memes, because I'm really looking forward to this movie. I've got my tux all set up for opening day. Cliff, take us out.
You're very funny. Hey, for all you fantasy fans out there, maybe there's a couple of you fantasy fans who like to talk about, J.R.R. Tolkien. It's really wonderful to have you all here. But one more recommendation before we go, and nobody else has talked about it yet, but the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves, is a wildly successful comedy heist. It's not even a fantasy movie. It is a comedy heist of the First Order, but like Ocean's 11, where they're using high-tech gadgets to break into the casino and steal all the money. In this movie, they're using magic and character skills from D&D to pull off a glorious heist. It is good-natured, entertaining, really well done. Surprisingly, it was more fun than we deserved, because I keep thinking about the Dungeons and Dragons movie that New Line Cinema hastily released in movie theaters in the year 2000, right before Fellowship of the Ring came out, because they wanted to get the bad taste off of everyone's palate to get that D&D movie out of the way. The one with Jeremy Irons in it, that one.
Yeah.
And the guy with the blue lipstick. Anyways, I just want to say, before we close the show, you guys are fantasy fans and you like really good stuff and good stories. So take yourself to the cinema and go see Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Guaranteed good time. Until then, we're going to bring you more news, mischief, and mayhem from the world of Arda, including what's happening in the publishing world, the gaming world, and a lot more information from Rings of Power as they continue over in there in the UK, as they continue to work and produce season 2 of this very high profile and very dynamic show, with a lot of people loving it, a lot of detractors, and a lot of people like myself just sitting in the middle somewhere trying to figure it all out. Until then, folks, you can come and find us at theonering.net. Point your web browser to theonering.net, and on social channels, take out the dot. You'll find us on Twitter, Twitch, and on our Discord and Instagram and Facebook, The One Ring Net, without the dot. Myself, I'm QuickBeam2000. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Anybody else want to give your handle for a quick shout out?
I'm at Cruising Kathy on Twitter.
Yep.
So CC, so Cruising Kathy with a C.
Got it.
And I'm very geeky on there, as well as very sports centric and occasionally political. Sorry.
No, I'm just Mad Eye Gamgee on Twitter.
Lovely to have you here, Mad Eye Gamgee and Garfemau and the inimitable Justin Sewell. Thank you for putting this show together, and I want to say a big thank you, a tip of the hat, to Green Dragon and other hardworking staff at theonering.net who helped us put together a really fun and entertaining March Madness for this year, 2023. Until next week, you guys, please be gentle with yourselves and be kind with yourselves. And we have a big surprise lined up. Matt, Nerd of the Rings, will be here on this broadcast next Tuesday.
And we should probably apologize for our April Fool's posts.
Oh, we'd never apologize. We never apologize.
Not apologize, but like, did you catch the April Fool's jokes? Because there was 2 of them.
They weren't jokes.
I forgot about that second one.
They
were good
jokes.
ones. They were good ones. Really good stuff.
All right.
The fun never ends, but unfortunately, this show has to. So we're going to say goodnight and wrap it all up. Be gentle with one another, and we'll see you at 5 p.m. Pacific time next week, right here on Torn Tuesday. I love to say good night and good luck, but I also like to say buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Chris Pine was always the best Chris.